Madam Ambassador, greetings and nice to see you in Lviv, in our city.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Why did you decide to visit our city?
Well, because it's beautiful. No, I've often been in Lviv, but I came this time because we have been supporting, together with Poland, some modular housing, which was launched today, which is for many of the displaced people who have found themselves in Lviv. It was a real privilege to be there for it.
What did impress you during your visit?
Well, the same thing impresses me whenever I travel around Ukraine during the invasion, which is how determined people are at every level to look after each other and to build community out of the help that countries like the UK give them. It's completely inspiring. I'm not even sure Ukrainians understand how that comes across to countries like the UK where people want to help, but it's fantastic.
Did you have some special moments during your visit to Lviv?
Yeah, all of them. But if I can think of an example, so I have come from a career hub for women who've experienced domestic violence and women who have been displaced, and have just been given this scarf by a woman who learned how to paint on fabric. And it's extraordinary to see how women have been able to access skills here, build careers, find real jobs in ways that will transform their lives. But also, so much more importantly, you need women to help rebuild this country. You need everybody to rebuild this country. So when women are learning skills that make them feel so much stronger about themselves, this benefits the country too.
Thank you for your support and for support of your government. I would like to move on to the war topic hour.
Sure.
It's really important for lots of Ukrainians to know what is going on with our security system and the war. Is the discussion on donation of possible fighter jets to Ukraine still going on Downing Street and between UK government and Ukrainian government?
So when our Prime Minister visited Ukraine, he had that conversation with the President, and when the President came to the UK more recently, they continued that conversation. The Prime Minister has tasked our Defence Secretary to work through what a contribution would look like, but he also made clear to the President that the provision of Western jets is a long-term exercise. So that's why he took the view that what the UK could most usefully do is to provide pilot training so that Ukrainian fighters could be ready for when this kit is available, but it is not an immediate thing, and therefore will play a bigger role in Ukraine's future security resilience than it is an answer right now.
Speaking about Western jets, what could cause a shift on Downing Street to provide such jets maybe sooner?
It's not a political issue. Rishi Sunak has indicated that he understands the need for it. It is that it's not something that can be provided now. Because that training is complex, because the kit is complex, it can't just be given. It's got to be developed. So that's why we start with training and then we provide the jets. But this is not about politics. It's about what currently exists.
But Downing Street is sure to provide such jets to us in the future.
Well, at the moment, I think the government policy is really clear that we aim to help Ukraine defend itself by all means possible. And we are receptive to what the Ukrainians tell us they think they need. So our Prime Minister has indicated that he understands the need for this. He just can't provide it now because it is a longer-term project.
Recently we had an interview with Lord Richard Dennett. He said that he doesn't see any reason why the UK government should not provide us all types of conventional weapons like modern jets and cruise missiles, long-range capabilities. In your opinion, what could change this policy, and do you support this meaning of our guest?
Well, I don't think what Lord Dennett is saying is any different, actually, from what the government is doing. The government has agreed to provide the kind of support that Ukraine has asked for. We have provided already an extraordinary range of anti-tank, anti-sea, anti-air defence systems. We have provided medium-range and are looking at long-range capability. And as I say, jets are part of the conversation. So actually, I don't see where the government policy and what Lord Dennett is saying differs too widely.
Speaking about security and our possible security guarantees, the Wall Street Journal reported that Germany, France and Great Britain want to propose us sort of security guarantees in exchange of peaceful talks with Russia. Is it a correct information from the Wall Street Journal?
it's not.
It's not. But did at least some discussions on this topic take place?
There is no way in which the UK would be forcing any kind of conditionality on Ukraine in exchange for any kind of peace talks. Ukraine has to decide for itself when it is ready for what will be genuine peace talks in good faith. That has to be for Ukraine to decide.
Speaking about security guarantees, what kind of security guarantees the UK government could provide us? And could they be provided before the end of the war or only after the end of the war?
So in a way, part of it is already being provided because at least part of the equation has to be that Ukraine possesses a capability such that any future attempt to do anything like what has happened here in the last year again needs to be considered by Russia in the context of that capability. So part of what we're all doing is making sure that Ukraine is not just in possession of NATO-capable defence systems, but also that Ukrainians know how to use these things. So then you become a formidable defence force. And that then is a thing that has to be reckoned with if Russia thinks it wants to do this again. That's probably one of the most important parts of a security guarantee.
Speaking about security, I would like to cover NATO membership. In Ukraine, Ukraine officially applied to NATO. Jens Stoltenberg confirmed that he received official application. Did NATO assess this application, and what is the result of this assessment? Are there any decisions on Ukrainian membership in NATO?
Well, you know that NATO has an open door policy, so any country is welcome to apply. The process is that it has to be agreed by consensus. That means that all NATO members have to agree. So necessarily, there's a process by which you get to that consensus. And that includes, of course, not just NATO standard operability, but NATO standard institutions. So I think that is a work in progress. And I do think that this invasion has shown about as clearly as it possibly could that in terms of NATO operability, Ukraine has what it takes. But we know that at the moment there is not consensus in NATO. What there is a really healthy discussion about what that road looks like. It'll be discussed at the Vilnius summit, and then let's see after that.
Would UK government support Ukraine's membership in NATO? What is the position of UK government during these discussions with members?
We've always been supportive of Ukraine's desire to join NATO. We also think that and this is why we've been investing in the building of strong institutions, which would include strong defence and security institutions within which we all know, that some reforms are needed. And Minister Reznikov most recently talked about some of those reforms. We regard those as still very important and work must be done in that area. But we are supportive.
But don't you think that Ukrainian army already has proven to be an effective one because it done effective job on the battlefield?
Yes, but as I just said, there is operability, and then there is the strength and probity of institutions. And we know that there is still work to do on that, not least because, as I said, the Defence Minister himself has spoken about it. So it can be taken as a barrier to further progression. I certainly think it's perfectly possible, and there is the will in Ukraine to make progress in those reforms, and we are assisting with those, but they remain important.
Could we face some good news on the next NATO summit, or it's still a discussion?
It's still under discussion, but I can hardly imagine a NATO summit during the Russian invasion of Ukraine where there is not a substantive and progressive discussion about the next steps that NATO can take in assisting Ukraine.
Speaking about membership in alliances, recently Tobias Elwood, head of UK Defence Committee, during our interview invited Ukraine to join UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force. If there is an application from Ukraine to join JEF, will UK government accept it?
Well, I think that's a level of technical debate that's beyond my own pay grade, but I can imagine that the UK government in the area of defence would be considering all ways in which Ukraine could participate.
But could you personally imagine Ukraine being a member of JEF in nearest future?
I can't comment on it.
Let's talk also about economic battle west against Russia. There are lots of Russian state assets in the United Kingdom and Russian oligarchs' money. And does the UK government support confiscation of these assets and further donations them for Ukraine to help us to rebuild our economy and infrastructure?
So I don't think the freezing of assets is the issue. And of course, because of many of the sanctions that we've applied, much of it and increasing amounts of it are frozen. The question is the legal premise by which you are able to transfer that over and make it possible. And that's not just a debate for the UK, it's also a debate between Ukrainian institutions about how that works. It is, I've now been talking with my colleagues in London who are working on it. It is fearsomely complicated. And I think it will take some time to create a result that is sufficiently meaningful that you get enough money flowing, because after all, as we know, rebuilding Ukraine is going to take billions. But there is no question that there is a will and an interest in the UK to see how it can be made possible.
So there are lots of law problems.
Well, there are gaps in the law. So you have to think about how to deal with those in such a way that you get the result that you want. You can foresee a way in which you create the legal framework for it, and then you find yourself in debate about it for years, and that's not what we want. So that is the work that is going on in the UK at the moment.
Speaking about the law, there has been a law in UK Parliament on possible confiscation of Russian assets, but it has not been supported by members of UK Parliament, and it seems like it has been rejected by UK Parliament. Could it be harmful for UK economy to confiscate this money, or there are problems with other fields? I'm
not aware of any draft law that has gone before UK Parliament on this question.
Speaking about anti-Russian sanctions, does the UK government plan to strengthen them because Russia tried to evade them using third parties?
So I'm really proud of the work that we've done on sanctions. Actually, I'm proud on two levels. I'm firstly proud of what we've done bilaterally. We've sanctioned over 1,500 individuals and companies now, and we know the dent that this has made in Putin's economy, in his ability to develop weapons. He's having to strip the parts off jets himself so that he can make the things that he needs for this war. His exports are down. His access to foreign finance is down. It's clearly having an effect. And so the second thing that I'm proud about is that we're doing it right next to the EU and the US, who together have their packages of sanctions. And this is moving in a very united way, which is fantastic, and as it should be, because of course the common effect of that is the multiplier effect is so much greater. But I think that just as in military support, countries must show their unity in other areas of support, and sanctions are a really important part of that. So when we work together in that way, it's really great to be showing that unity. As for what we do next, we have always done this in the same way as we have operated our military support, and indeed humanitarian and economic support, by checking in with the Ukrainian government what it makes sense next to do. You know, every time you apply sanctions, you can see what you're doing, but it also becomes clearer what you're not doing. But sometimes it's not clear until you've taken the next step. So we are in regular conversation, our Treasury, with the Finance Ministry and with other ministries in Ukraine to see which sectors have we missed, where are those loopholes which Russia may be using, how then might we apply sanctions to help close those. That is an ongoing conversation.
So do you believe that it is really effective on policies that is harmful for Russian economy, and could it stop the war in one moment in the future?
Well, I don't think it can stop it right now. It's a thing that has effect over a period of time. And I also think that, like everything else we're doing, it can't stop it on its own. So the important thing here is that we look at the invasion across the range of things that we need to do. And sanctions is a really important part of what we need to do.
Speaking about, I would like also to cover UN membership of Russia in United Nations. Right. Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs said that Russia illegally captured its seat in UN Security Council. Does the UK government support possible exclusion of Russia from UN Security Council as a member? Great Britain is a member of UK's UN Security Council, and do you personally think that Russia deserves to have a seat in UN Security Council?
Well, Russia, of course, flouted the UN Convention by invading Ukraine, and it's our job, not just as a UN member state, but as a member of the P5, to be calling that out and to be calling for accountability, and that's what we're doing. And it's quite, that's another area actually where unity is not just strong, but it's also growing inside the UN for that condemnation, which sends an important message to Russia. So that is what we will continue to do.
Are there enough support from members of the United Nations to exclude Russia from the organization in the nearest future?
I don't think that there is a debate at the moment on exclusion. There is a debate, well, not just a debate, but there are actions about how you hold Russia accountable, and that's where the UN focus is.
Speaking about accountability, does the UK government support the creation of special tribunal of crime of Russia's crime of aggression?
We understand why Ukraine wants it, are really empathetic about it. I've seen and spoken to enough people who have experienced some of the worst crimes that Russia has committed that make it clear why Ukraine wants to take that path. I think there are two paths that we're taking in support of it. One is that it's really important that the International Criminal Court is enabled to do its job. That's the court that has the, if you like, global responsibility for holding people accountable for those sorts of crimes. So it's really fantastic to have seen what happened, of course, in the last couple of weeks. The indictment of Putin and of their children commissioner for the illegal abduction of children. It was a very important step. And we are giving funds to build capacity from the International Criminal Court to run their investigations. So they are collaborating with Andrew Costin, the Prosecutor General, and we are working with the Prosecutor General's office and the ICC and providing experts and providing capacity. It's incredibly important that the ICC is enabled to do its job. On the question of the International Tribunal then, at the moment, we think that a hybrid model whereby you create an international element that can interact with Ukrainian law is probably, practically speaking, the best way to go. And this is why Dominic Raab, our Justice Minister, held the conference that he ran last week to explore that. So I think it's a practical issue for us, that we understand the principle and we are trying to find the best and most practical way to make that a reality while enabling the other organs of justice to do their job.
Is it realistic, in your opinion, to hold accountable not only Russian President Putin, but all members of his inner cycle, all military leaders which are responsible for war crimes?
I think it's incredibly important that all crimes are investigated and all those who are seen and understood and researched, if you like, assessed to have had a role are held to account, yes.
But what about the execution of this order of arrest against Putin? Is this real to conduct the execution of this order? Because Putin still stays in Russia and I think he will not travel to the United Kingdom or to the European Union due to this order.
Or lots of other countries now that this has happened. So, you know, you have to turn it around to the counterfactual. You can look at it as the outcome, and I absolutely agree. It is no easy business, of course it isn't, to bring someone at the top of government to justice, but that doesn't mean that you don't start the process, and that doesn't mean that there aren't consequences as a result. This is a bit of a sword of Damocles now. If Putin travels or if their children's commissioner travels, there is a possibility that they can be picked up and transferred to face justice for those crimes. I think that sends an enormously important message, not just for Ukraine actually, but for the institutions of justice that exist.
But if Putin visits the United Kingdom, London will execute this order due to International Rome Statute? Well,
we are signatory of the ICC, but as you say, I'm not sure he'll be coming anytime soon.
Unfortunately. I would like also to cover our last topic, the support of Ukraine from the royal family. As the King Charles visited Ukrainian troops training in the United Kingdom.
Oh, you mean in the UK? I'm sorry, you're quite right.
Yeah, in the UK.
Yes,
and also Prince William visited Poland military bases which support our soldiers. What does it mean and why is it so important for royal family to, what is this a sign of?
I do think that support has been fantastic and it's been there from the offset, of course, and they have also reached out, of course, to the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh met with the President and First Lady when they came to London a couple of years ago for the signing of the trade agreement. And there was warmth there, they got on and that relationship has continued. So I can imagine that at the very least they felt real empathy when Ukraine came under attack. But I think they're also very clear about the humanitarian results of this. They are keen to represent how the UK's support and the UK's support for Ukraine is very widespread. So they want to be able to do that. And I think also the royal family, you know, is out there to represent some of the most fundamental values that we hold dear. And one of the main reasons why ordinary Brits support the UK policy on Ukraine is because they see those values being trampled over by an invasion of this kind. So I can see that the royal family understands that, feels that too, and therefore wants to be part of the public face of UK support.
Also, there has been a personal meeting with President Zelensky and the king during his visit. Why it was so important and why it was so significant for the king to personally meet with President Zelensky, with our war leader?
Well, you know, he had only recently succeeded his mother, and I think he was keen to deliver that message. But you know, a personal audience couldn't really be clearer, could it, in terms of showing that all the institutions of the UK are united in UK policy. So you have government, you have parliament. President Zelensky delivered that extraordinary and historic speech in Westminster Hall, and you have the royal family. These are among your key institutions in the UK. So I think that's why he probably felt it was important.
And my last question for you will be regarding a possibility of support from the United Kingdom of Ukraine as long as it takes. If the war will continue for a long time, unfortunately, will the UK government support us really as long as it takes?
Well, that's policy, and therefore that's the answer, for as long as it takes. But I'm interviewed fairly often for UK media, and I'm asked the same thing: how long do you think it will take? When we say as long as it takes, do you think it will be, you know, 6 months, a year? And my answer back has been, the key thing that the UK has to do, which is the same as what everyone has to do, is to hold our nerve. Because until there such time as Russia decides that it is going to pull out their troops and negotiate in good faith, we must stay alongside Ukraine. And that's a hard message at any time for any country. But I have no sense other than that the government of the UK and the people of the UK are behind that message.
Thank you for your time and for participation in our interview, and glory to Ukraine.
Героям слава.
Дякую.
Thank you. Дякую.